All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take our model from Fusion 360. We're going to save it into a file format that we can then use our slicer with. And our slicer is what actually creates the code that the printer uses to print with. So let's get to it. We're going to open our bodies folder over here, and we're going to find our model. We're going to right click on it and use Save as Mesh. That's going to bring up a dialog box. It'll take a few seconds for it to do that work. There we go. And it's the Save as Mesh dialog box. The first thing in it is the selection. So I can unclick this and then click it to select something. I shouldn't have done that. It's going to take some time to redo it all now. We want our format to be 3MF, looks good. Actually, any of these on here would be fine. Change our unit type to millimeter. The Prusa slicer is expecting numbers in millimeters. So if we send it centimeter numbers, it thinks they're millimeters and it's going to just make it super small. So your thing that's 7 centimeters tall will go into Prusa as 7 millimeters tall. So make sure you switch the unit type to millimeters. That'll make life easier. The refinement here, you can go with a medium refinement is good for almost everything. The only time that I would go with a higher refinement is if you're printing something that's small and intricate, like a figurine or something with a face. You might want lots of refinement so you get more detail in it. But for something like this that has flat edges to it, more refinement is not going to give you a better print. It's just going to make everything longer and harder to work with. And there's a bunch of refinement options here too. You could, if you wanted to, play around with those and see what they do. Basically what Fusion is doing is it's creating all these triangles along the surfaces to approximate the shape of this thing. So it doesn't send out the entire shape, it just sends out sort of an approximation of it. And this refinement says how good the approximation is. Again, with something flat and angular like this, a medium refinement is more than enough. I'm going to click OK. Now it's going to ask me where I want to save this. You need to save yours wherever we're saving stuff. So I don't know, whatever solution we've come up for the year we're using, save it there. And I'm going to come down here to, I don't know what I'm going to come down here to. Oh, hexagon planter. And then I'm going to do this as new folder. And I'm going to create a new folder. 3MF file, because that's the file type I'm using. So 3MF files. Open up here, and I'm going to call this the planter. Video version for me, I'm going to click save. So now I've just saved that. Make sure you know where you're saving yours because you're going to need it in just a second. Okay, now it's all done. At this point, I can close out Fusion 360, and I'm going to open up a program called Prusa Slicer. To do that, I'm just going to come down here to the search menu and type in Prusa. You'll see, whoops, that's Prus. No. You might see two things. You might see a Prusa Slicer and a Prusa Viewer. You want the slicer, not the viewer right now. When you get there, it should open up to something like this, although the settings may be wrong. So let's go play with some stuff right away. First thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here to where it says Printer. Click down here, and you're going to do Add Remove Printers, and you're going to do Add Remove Presets. And then on the second row, this is the printer that you want to add. Make sure that only the 0.4 nozzle is done. Check this up here. Make sure this is unchecked. If it's checked, uncheck it. The only printer we want included is just this one right here. This is the one that we have. And then, yep. So the original Prusa i3, MK3S, and MK3S Plus. Those are the printers that we bought, and we're going to hit Finish then. Now you should be able to select the original i3 printer instead of the mini from the list. That's the first fix we need to make. Now we need to add some filament that we're going to use. So up here in the filament one, the filament is the plastic that we melt and make the stuff out of. So we need to do Add Remove Filament. come over here to Pet G right here. And then over here, you're going to choose generic Pet G. And you're going to click finish. Actually, check with me, and I'll make sure that you have the right type of filament. So it's either going to be Prusament or it's going to be generic, depending on what stuff we've purchased that year. And hit finish. And then here where it says filament, this is where we're going to start choosing it. Now we're going to choose a Pet G. And then our quality here. Because it's super angular and straight and flat almost everywhere, we don't need a thin layer. So what this refers to is how thick each layer is going to be, how tall it's going to be. So these really ultra detailed ones will give you like a thinner layer, which means you get more layers. So a little figurine like this might have 400 or 500 layers at this level, and over here it may only have 100 layers. So you get more detail with this one, but it's a lot longer a print, and it can actually be, it requires the printer to be really tuned in nice to get a good print with that ultra detail one. For ours, it's a lot of flat angles. It's going to look fantastic at 0.3, so we're going to use the 0.3 draft. It'll be super fast, excuse me, and look really great. Now that we don't need in ours, okay, so let's just get this thing sliced. So first of all, let's go here, File, and let's import. And we're going to import an STL, the top one, 3MF. We're going to go find that thing that we did. Mine was in Hexagon Planter, 3MF files, Planter video version, and there it is. I'm going to drag it, whoops, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it over. When it turns green, that means it's in the print space. If it goes blue, it means it's out. You can see that dark blue that's forming there is the part that's out of the print bed area. So I'm going to keep going. In fact, I'm just going to hit the auto arrange button up here, and it's going to try to probably drop it right in the middle. Let's take a look. Yeah, so it dropped it right in the middle on me. Now to move around, to rotate it around, you're going to hold down the left mouse button and then move your mouse around. So try that. To zoom in and out, you're going to roll the mouse ball wheel. Try that. To shift left and right, you're going to push the mouse ball wheel down like a button and then move your mouse. So that works a lot like it does in Fusion. So it should feel pretty natural to you that all those things happen that way. The nice thing is when you flip over and you want to look at it from underneath, you still see the print bed, but you see it as clear now. So that way you can see where everything is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and slice this, and we can look for problems in our print. So I'm going to do a quick slice now. It'll take it a minute or two to do all the slicing. And what it's doing now is it's done already. It's generating all the slices because the 3D printer is going to go around and create one layer, then go on top, create the next layer all the way up. So to check this out for problems, I'm going to grab this top arrow. Notice that it's 482 layers of plastic from here to up to the top. I'm going to grab this top arrow here and drag it all the way down. You can see how it's undoing the print job. Once I get at the bottom, I'm going to let go and let it sit at the bottom. Now I'm going to use the arrow key. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to use the arrow key to just add layers. So you can add one layer at a time, and you can see what it does. It creates a few solid layers, and then up here it starts creating what's called infill. And this is the inside of the piece that's not solid plastic. It creates this sort of red mesh that you see going along there. And then it's going to just keep building that up. And this is where it hits its first layer. This is where our first problem exists. If you can imagine right here, it's going to come here and try and put this orange square of plastic in the middle of air, and it's not going to stay there. It's going to be a complete mess. The yellow one, again, there's nothing for it to sit on, so it's going to be a complete mess. And even these blue ones, you can see the direction of them. If I tip it, yep. The direction it's going to start here, which is something, it's on plastic here, but it's going to go out overhanging and try and come back. That is not going to stay either. All this plastic is just going to go out there and flop down and create a big curly mess. There's no way we can print it like this. So, but let's keep going. Let's just look to see. You can see from the edge, like there's no way it can print out here in this corner. It can put a piece of plastic down. All right, so let's keep going up and see if we find any other problems that we have to deal with. Because we might as well know about them before. Oh, wait, I think I see something. Look at that. These two layers right here, it's going to try and print these. This is like that outside chunk of stuff. It's going to try and print these two layers. This layer is going to be out in the middle of space, not going to print. 2, 3, 4, 5. This layer may start to get connected, but the other first 5 for sure are going to just be plastic everywhere all over the place. That's going to go up. So the rest of that looks pretty good. So you can see every layer now is on top of another layer, so that has no problem printing that. And even on turns like this, it doesn't have a problem with it. So you can see how it like changed direction here, but each one's still on top of the next layer. You can kind of see how the infill is working as well. And then boom, that was totally fine. So when it came back like this, it was fine. Excuse me. It was fine because it's on plastic heading back in, so that's not an issue. And then this all looks good. And then this is all building on top of stuff. And it all looks good. This top layer I'm worried about. Okay, this is not too bad actually. So let me talk about this real quick. This is what's called bridging. So you might be like, there's no way this plastic will hold, but it actually will, because at this corner, it is on something so that the plastic will stick to here. Then the print head will take one straight line all the way across and connect it to this side. And once it connects, it's going to harden and it's going to sit there like a little power line or a string going across, and it's going to be able to pull this off. Now, this piece may not fully adhere to the next layer and be wobbly, but it's going to give it the next layer just enough support to be able to start creating layers at that point. This should actually bridge and work just fine like that. And then all the way up, and that's the top surface. So our only problems then are down here at the base. So this overhang area, that's not going to print ever, and this isn't going to print. And those are two major problems. We can actually solve that just by flipping this over, because these things exist, all these overhangs exist at the bottom, and there won't be a problem at the top. Let's flip it and find out why. So to do that, I'm going to go back to over here in the lower left corner. I'm going to go back to my editor view, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to put a different side down. I want to put this top side down on the ladder. So it just flipped it over. I could choose any of these sides, right? So I could be like, hey, let's do all these different weird sides, whatever. And now that I've done that, I got to figure out which one's the top. I think this one is the top. So that's what we want. We want the top down and the bottom square in the top. And so I'm going to hit arrange again just to center it, and then that's good. And now I'm going to hit slice now. And because we've changed the orientation, we've got to re-slice it, and we're going to see how this slice goes. All right, so again, I'm going to be looking for problems. I'm going to zoom this all the way down, use the arrow key on my keyboard to just come up, and it looks like, okay, that looks so far so good. It's all on plastic at this point. Still all on plastic. Oh, still on top of each other. Good. Good. Now there's some bridging here. This one right. Oh, let me arrow down here. You can tell right here there's going to be that bridging, but because it's going from something to something, it's going to be able to make that bridge. What it can't do is go out and back without touching anything on the way there, right? It can't just have it hang out there. Okay, that's all good. And oh, those edges were a problem before. Let's go check out those edges and see if there's still a problem. As I go down, you can see there was never any time when there's plastic not above other plastic. So now all of a sudden those edges that were problematic are just fine. Let's make sure that, let's make sure that the top edges are good as well. So everything looks good. Right there was the top edge. So let's go check that out and see if there's going to be a problem. Arrow up. Okay, no, there's like everything is on the layer below it, so all of that's good. Now we've solved that problem. This ledge right here that was a problem upside down is no longer a problem because It was on the layer beneath it. Now right here is some good bridging as well. So notice right there, the printer's going to have to go from one side all the way to the other side and put plastic down. Let's see which direction it's going. Oh, that's good. It's a square, doesn't matter. It's going to go across here and back over and over again. And that's that bridging again. These layers won't be adhered to each other well because they're not being glued together, but they'll create a base that'll allow the next layer, which is this layer, to actually adhere to each other and get kind of done correctly. And then all the way up. And there's the infill, and then last layers. So yeah, this works great. So that was 15 minutes of discussion about 3D printing. You've got to learn those basics about what you're looking for so that you can do a good job of printing your stuff. So one last check. We're going to do a 0.3 draft on our print settings. We're using generic PETG as our plastic, our filament type. We're printing on the original Prusa i3, MKS3, MKS3 Plus. We're not using any supports. We'll talk about supports later when we need them. Our infill was set to 20%. That's totally fine. All of this is cool stuff. We can leave it alone. And now what we need to do is export this to G-code. Before we export this, actually let's export it now. We're going to export it twice actually. So this first time, we're going to put it in the folder with our other one, those 3MF files. I'm going to actually do a new folder. I'm going to call this the G-code. G-code is the type of file that the printer needs to do its thing on. So now we're creating the code for the file. I'm going to leave all this detail on here, but I'm going to change the name here to Planter Video Version. For me, you can name yours what you'd like, but make sure you leave all this other information there. It tells you the layer height, the type of plastic you use, the type of printer you use, and the total print time. It's going to take 9 hours and 13 minutes to print. I'm going to hit save on this. And the only problem now, though, is I can't take a flash drive over to the printers. They need the SD cards. So go pick out what color printer you want, grab that SD card, bring it back over, put it in your computer, and then you're going to export the G-code again, but this time you're going to export it to that SD card. And then from there, get some help learning how to use those 3D printers. They're super simple. You basically plug it, put in the SD card, find your file on there, click OK on it, and it just starts printing. You got to wipe down the print bed to make it clean as well. Other than that, it's super easy. Have a great time.